I'm thinking about free speech, and I suppose I'm prompted to think about this by this whole Draw Muhammad Day on whatever it is, May 20th. Because there's some funny things about that, I think. You know, there's some interesting reasons why a person would want to draw Muhammad and how they interface with this idea of free speech. I think one reason why a person might want to do that is, you know, because it is a particular strategic move against what are seen as impositions against free speech. So, for example, you know, if a certain person is threatened for making a cartoon, as the South Park creators were apparently threatened, then yeah, there's a strategic reason why a lot of people might want to duplicate that apparent offence in the way that I think Molly Norris, the American cartoonist who originally instituted Draw Muhammad Day, suggests. You know, the idea is to dilute the target, as she says. So rather than it just being these two guys who are receiving death threats, you know, notionally thousands of people commit the same crime and the target is diluted. It's a kind of I am Spartacus strategy. You know, in the film Spartacus, where I guess some Roman generals want to identify who Spartacus is so they can crucify him. And of course he owns up. Kirk Douglas puts his hand up and says, I am Spartacus. And then everyone else in the room also puts their hands up and says, I am Spartacus. So the target is diluted. In that particular case, of course, it ended up with everybody being crucified, not just Spartacus. So maybe you should just take him on for the team, I don't know. But the strategy is good. So that might be one reason why a lot of people might want to draw Muhammad, because it's, you know, it has kind of strategic value. But I think a lot of people aren't doing that, if I'm honest. I think a lot of people are doing it for other reasons. And they might be laudable reasons in their own right, but they're not the same reason. I mean, one reason, which perhaps isn't that laudable, is because it's offensive. Deliberately offensive. You know, a lot of people, I think, and I'm not immune to this sensation myself, a lot of people feel attacked or offended by the claims or the protestations or some of the statements made by a small number of highly vocal extremist Muslims, you know, feel personally assaulted by that and want to lash out, you know, want to strike back. And striking back at a person's taboos is very, very effective. You know, that's why people are pissed on the Quran in Abu Ghraib, because it's a very, very effective way of hurting someone. So yeah, I think another motivation for drawing Muhammad is because it just pisses off the Muslims, really. Not a terribly effective strategy for doing anything useful, but I think it's a good motivation there. Yeah, third reason to do it, I think it's a bit more complex, and for me the most interesting one, really. And it's to do with how we value freedom of speech, and what kind of status we give it, and not just freedom of speech, but also skepticism and the willingness to break taboos, and the active desire to transgress what is seen as either, just transgress, really. It's to employ that kind of transgression, which I think, as I say, I think overlaps with skepticism, to test received wisdom, to refuse to believe, to value, skepticism above all else, to just kind of refuse to accept any notion of things like sacredness. I don't just mean religious sacredness, I mean other kinds of sacredness, sacred ideas, sacred values, and to constantly test those. It seems to me there's something almost religious going on there, almost religious. I'm sure the people who do this won't think of it in religious terms, and maybe I am abusing the term myself, but it does seem to me it fits into a set of histories of certain kinds of practices which are quasi-religious. You know, a lot of the things that people like people like Aleister Crowley, you know, the magicians, and the the devil worshippers and the Satanists and the Order of the Golden Dawn and all those Ordo Templi Orientis, all those sort of 19th century mystical cults. I mean, a lot of that was about, a lot of their practices involved the deliberate overturning of taboos, the deliberate breaking of established taboos. You know, pissing on the cross, or just taking part in aberrant sexual practices deliberately as a mystical practice, because it was taboo, not because there was something special about that activity, but because it was forbidden. You know, to do the thing that is forbidden, to test, not just to test the limits, but to go beyond the limits, to recognise the absence of limits, if you like, was a part of that tradition. And in the philosophical school of the skeptics, you do find that tradition going on there. Kind of radical skepticism, radical disbelief, refusal to accept that there is a limit to what a person can say and what a person can do and what a person can discount and what a person can disbelieve. It's a metaphysical practice doing that. You find it in things like chaos magic. Chaos magic is where you adopt a belief, you know, a religion or some kind of, any kind of belief system for a while, and then you consciously move away from it. Once you've completely embedded within it, you consciously discount it and move on to something else. Because, you know, in that kind of idea there is a higher form of being, or a more spiritually or whatever authentic way of being, which is outside of all belief systems, including the belief systems of science, of course. And again, that's about crossing the boundary, always drawing the cartoon, always saying, I don't believe this. It's held almost as a sacred rite, R-I-T-E as well as R-I-G-H-T. Yeah, and I think this, I don't know if I'm right here, but I certainly sense within this Draw Muhammad thing, there's a little bit of that going on. There's a quasi-mystical, almost religious desire to preserve that particular right, the right to discount, the right to be radically skeptical, to not believe anything, to cross every boundary, to test every claim to destruction, as I say, a kind of sacred duty almost.